thank you for viewing this recording of a free event provided by Next Village San Francisco for our community. Next Village San Francisco is a local nonprofit providing services and support that empower seniors to live independently in their own homes. We welcome people who want to keep connected with their community as members, volunteers, and supporters. We host 30 to 40 free activities and events each month for the public, and our members have access to our network of volunteers. Learn more and get involved at nextvillagesf.org. We hope you enjoy this video.
All right, thank you all for coming for the presentation today. We'll be covering how to update your Apple devices. So first we want to talk about what an update is. So an update is a set of changes to update, fix, and or improve software. So it's different than an upgrade, which usually costs money and involves some sort of big replacement process. An update is typically like an internal update through your iPhone, your iPad, or your Mac. This update is kind of a special one because the most recent update that Apple had left some holes in the security. It created a pathway for some people to be hacked. So the most recent update, the iOS, I believe it's 15.01, is an update that actually patches up some of these holes. So we wanted to give you the tools that you need to make sure that your devices are safe and secure.
And in this particular hack, hackers can get into your system and operate as you. And then they can send out spam and scam emails. You can just commandeer your whole device.
Yeah, we don't want that happening to anyone. So thank you all for showing up and protecting yourselves today. Okay. So why are updates in general important? They keep the operating system current. So that means that your device will have less bugs, it'll run smoother, so a lot less glitchy. And it also means that it'll have better compatibility with the apps. So on your phone, this is the Settings app, Mail, Zoom. On your computer, it's Zoom, Safari, Google Chrome, or Firefox. It's basically any program an application is any program that runs on your computer. So the more you keep the software of your computer or iPhone or iPad up to date, the better it will run with those apps. Most people have their apps set up to update automatically. So if you're not updating your computer very often, the apps in your computer or other device will be less compatible. You'll notice that if you don't update, you run the risk of possibly getting hacked. It also will have worse compatibility with the app. So that means they might close abruptly or kind of jump around. And you'll notice that your device will run a bit slower and will be a bit more glitchy. So it kind of varies. There's not a set schedule of how often updates come out, but there's roughly 10 updates a year.
So an example of this is many people have Lyft or Uber on their phones. And if your phone is not updated, you may not be able to open your app. You may not be able to summon that ride, and you could be in the middle of anywhere and the app won't work. So there's a number of ways that you'll see it reflected, but for the most part, it'll slow your phone down again, and it'll just be full of glitches, and it won't do what you want it to do.
Mm-hmm. It'll make your life harder, not easier, which is kind of against the point of cell phones. Okay. We're going to talk about how long an update can take. So I figured out yesterday in preparation for this presentation that if your phone is super up to date, I have a fairly new model. My phone update took less than 10 minutes. I didn't realize it could take such a short amount of time. If you do have an older phone or you have skipped the past couple of updates, it can take a couple of hours to update your cell phone. That's just because it's taking a bigger leap, so it just needs a little bit more time. If you're updating your Mac, we suggest you plan for at least an hour for your computer to update. It's possible it'll take less time, and that's a happy surprise. It's possible that it could take more time if it has been a while since you've updated your system. If you are going to update your computer, which we strongly recommend, what I always do is I will start the update before I go to sleep. So I sign on and make sure everything's ready to go. And then as soon as my computer shuts off, which is the first step of the update, then I can go to bed. It'll take however long it needs. And then when I wake up, my computer is all ready to go. You should be aware that when you start your computer, back up for the first time after an update, it'll take I like to think of it like the computer is just waking up a little bit. Some apps might take a moment to update and recalibrate with the system, but after, I don't know, 15 minutes or so, everything should be good to go, and you'll notice that your computer is running smoother than before. Okay, and then how do we know if it's time for an update? So on your phone, you see this gray box in the middle. This is what the update notification will look like on your lock screen. So your lock screen is, if my phone is completely black and I just touch it, it'll have a notification that pops up here, and it'll look like this message in the middle. So it says software update will be auto installed, or it'll say software update is ready. So that just means that there's a new update for your phone. And then if you go open up your phone and go into the settings app, you'll notice that this area at the top that says software update tonight, there's a little red dot right there, and that means that it's time for me to update my phone. Now on your computer, if you open up the settings of your computer, you'll notice that right here where it says software update, there's a little gear in the corner and then a little red dot right above it, and that means that it's time to update your MacBook software. And then you can also see right here, if you go to software update, this is what the page will look like. So if you're all up to date and everything's good, you won't see any option to update now right here. It'll just say your software is up to date. And Jacqueline, do you have a comment?
Are you with us so far, folks? Do you need us to slow down or back up or? Okay. Thanks.
Mhm. Okay, now we'll talk about how to update your iPhone/iPad. I'm just going to say at the top that the processes for iPhone and iPad are mostly the same, so we're just going to lump them together. So, yeah, so the first step that you're going to need to do is plug your iPhone or iPad into power. So have it set up and charging, and then you'll need to be connected to Wi-Fi. So what you're going to do, once you're all set up, you can go into your settings app on your iPhone or iPad, go to general, and then choose software update and update. And on the next page, I'll show you what that looks like. Yeah, so it's the same process as before. If you click, there's actually two ways to get to the update. So you can hit software update tonight, and that'll have you actually skip this second page right here and jump right here to where it says software update. So if you open the settings app, and you see software update tonight, it'll bring you to this page over here, and you can hit install now. And then once your software is all up to date, you'll see this final page that says iOS 15.6.1 is up to date. So that means that you have no more updates. You're all current. The other way to get there is if you open your applications or your settings app and then go to general, it'll bring you to the second page that says software update. And then it'll bring you to this third page that says software update. So if you ever open your phone and you don't see the software update tonight, but you want to check to see if you do have software that's ready to be updated, you can do general software update, and then it'll either have this page that says you're due for an update, or it'll have this page that says you're all good to go. Jacqueline, did you have a comment?
No, but I'm just going to ask you to slow down just a little bit.
Yes, can
All right.
do.
Any questions so far? Go ahead.
Yes, I have a question.
Mhm.
What if that software?
Whoops.
I mean, is that only there because you're on automatic update, or?
So I don't have automatic update on because I typically do it within a day or two, but I just like to keep an eye on how often that happens. It'll say software update tonight, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it will update automatically. That just means that there is an update ready to go.
Oh, the reason I asked is because that doesn't show up on my iPhone. So I just go to general software update and install now, but I don't have that showing up on my iPhone.
So it may be that your software isn't up to date, and this is a newer development, like something that was offered with a more recent update. Also, what model of phone do you have?
7 Plus.
Yeah, so your phone model is a little bit older, and this might not be an option with an older phone model. But as long as you're able to get to general software update and install now, then you're good to go.
All right.
So if I could, one of the things, if your phone says iOS for under version, it says 15.6.1. That's where they're at in updates. But
Okay.
also famously, and Harrison, correct me if I'm wrong, one thing that happens is that with older phones, Apple just eventually disregards updating them. And that does two things. It leaves you in the lurch, but it also forces you to eventually go buy a new phone that will
Right.
have more current operating software in it. So so it may not update. For example, I have an iPad that's quite old and it doesn't update anymore. They won't. Yeah, the operating system they installed can't keep up with all of the additions and whatnot that new functions and whatnot. But later on, we can help you find out where you're at with that.
Right. Yeah. So how do you know, like for your iPad, how do you know that it won't accept any new updates?
Because when I click it and it tells me it needs an update, and then I start clicking through to update it, it just spins and spins and spins, and it never starts the updating process. And it also it's just acting so glitchy, like it's a nightmare to use. So that's how you'll know it just won't do it. I mean, my iPad is back at 9.3.6. So, and they're up in the 15s.
A couple behind.
Pardon me?
That's a couple updates behind.
Yeah, this is about, this iPad's about 10 years old. So.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Certainly.
And I don't know if I mentioned it at the top, but iOS stands for iPhone operating system. So if we say operating system or iOS, we're referring to the same thing.
And that's the same thing as software.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Different words for the same concept. All right,
Thanks.
I'm going to move it along. So yes, so my phone didn't require me to do this, but I think that's because I have Face ID set up, which I don't think everyone has, but you may need to enter your Apple ID password. So if you don't have your password, you will need to find that in order to update your software. And this is just what the message will look like if you do need to enter that. Okay, and then the differences between iPad and iPhone. So for both devices, you may need to enter your Apple ID password. If you have Face ID set up on your iPhone, you may not need to. I don't know if they still allow you to use your fingerprint to do the updates, but regardless, you may need that. So it's better to just have that ready in case you do. Also, when you're updating your iPad, it may need to send a verification code to your iPhone or your Mac. So that just means that you've entered your password, you're trying to get in, and then it'll have a message that pops up that says, enter a verification code. And you'll see, so Jacqueline had her iPad and iPhone connected. So you can see that her iPhone got this message that said Apple ID verification code. So this allows her to enter that code into the iPad to update the iPad. It's just another way of staying a little bit more secure. So say if someone does know your Apple ID password, they could have entered that, but they would need Jacqueline's explicit permission to update the operating system. And then she'll also get a little notification that you'll see on the right that says Apple ID sign in requested, and she can allow or not allow it. Obviously, she would allow it because it's her, but if she didn't recognize it, she could say don't allow, and that's another way that Apple allows you to stay a little bit more secure. Does anyone have questions about the Apple ID verification code? I don't know if you'll all run into this problem, but in case you do, I just wanted to address it. Okay. So now we'll talk about how to update your Mac. So again, same as iPhone, you're going to need to make sure that you're plugged into power. If you have a desktop, it's obviously always plugged into power, but if you have a laptop, you'll need to find your charging cord and plug that in. And you'll also need to be connected to the Wi-Fi again. So once you're connected to Wi-Fi and plugged in, you can go to Settings app, choose General, then Software Update, and then Update. And then once again, I'll show you what that looks like. So you can open Settings and you'll see I have a big display of a lot of different settings I could play with. If you've never explored this on your computer, I recommend taking a minute and just kind of clicking through and familiarizing yourself. You'll see there's something called screen time where you can see how much time you spend on each application, which if you're like me and you spend too much time on Instagram, you find out at the end of the day and you get really scared. So it's a nice way to keep in check with yourself. There's a lot of other useful apps that they have in here and other settings, but for the software update, you'll see it's on the second row all the way on the left. And you can see right above the little application symbol, there's a little red dot. And that little red dot means that it's time for an update. So if I click on software update, it'll bring me to this next page where I can see an update is ready for your Mac. So it'll say update now. And if I choose update now, it will require you to enter your password again, and then it'll actually shut off and restart your computer in order to do the update. So if I had my system all up to date, which I do now, it'll just say, instead of a little button that says update now, it'll just have a message that says you have the most current version of the software, or no update needed, something along those lines. And I recommend choosing automatically keep my Mac up to date. So that means that your system will automatically update when there's a new update released. And this is just kind of a nice way to avoid to avoid having to do these steps again, honestly. Okay, and then this is a good thing to talk about, but what happens if I've never updated my device or it's been a very, very long time? It's possible that the next time you update your phone it's been a while, it's going to take possibly several hours. Like I said before, this is because your software the updates typically allow it to take small steps to stay up to date. And this will just be one giant leap in an update. So it'll take a while. You'll also notice huge improvements, I would assume. So you'll notice that your device will run a lot faster. It'll be less glitchy. It'll probably have more compatibility with the apps that you have on your device. If you had issues of apps crashing randomly, that might be fixed. It's possible it's something else, but keeping your software up to date is typically the issue, or it's typically my issue that I've noticed. If it's been a very, very long time, like we saw with Jacqueline's iPad, you may not be able to update it, but it typically, I think I talked about this on the next slide. So I think it's I think Apple creates products that last for about 7 years in terms of compatibility with new software. So if your device is less than 7 years old, it should be compatible with the newer software, and you should notice improvements once you've updated your device. Okay, and then what if your device won't update? That is a special situation, and you may need to contact Apple support. So we have that number on the screen. That's 1-800-275-2273. You also may need to go to an Apple store and get help from the Genius Bar. Same with the DMV. We recommend calling ahead of time and making an appointment because it can take forever. Or you can show up and then put your name down to get the next appointment and putz around the store a little bit. But yeah, Jacqueline?
If you're talking to Apple support, and they're usually very helpful, you can, and they can't help you, you can say to them, can you please make an appointment for me at the Genius Bar? And then they can look, you can tell them where your nearest Apple store is, and they will look and see what times are available, and they'll actually make the appointment for you.
Yeah, so they're super supportive over the phone, and if they can't be supportive over the phone, they'll get you set up for an in-person appointment. And there's 2 Apple stores located near the North Beach area. There's one in Union Square at 900 Post Street at Stockton. It's right across from, I forget the name of that mall. It's that the Union Square Mall. We all know it. And there's another one in the Marina at 2125 Chestnut Street, and that's between Steiner and Pierce. So those are great places to go if you're looking for in-person support. Okay, and then just want to cover this. Will there be a point where an older phone will no longer be able to handle updates? Yes, it's going to be after about 7 years. It should still be able to make calls. Again, with older devices, it's kind of tricky and you can't say whether it will or won't be able to do something. It should still be able to make calls, but your applications will not be compatible with your operating system anymore and will essentially be rendered useless. This is just because the apps are set to update automatically, or you can update them on your own, but they are constantly, the applications on your phone and computer are going to be eligible for updates more than your operating system, because there's smaller improvements that come out and they're typically run by private companies. So those are going to be updated more often, and the operating system will not be as often. So your apps and operating system will kind of verge off in terms of compatibility, and you won't really be able to use all the things on your phone that make it so handy. So that means your email may not work. Your browser may not work. If Lyft doesn't work, that's kind of a huge issue. So after about 7 years, you'll start to notice some issues, and it might be time to buy a new iPad, iPhone, or MacBook. Does anyone have questions about that? I know it's kind of a case-by-case situation, but if you have questions, we can probably help. Okay. All right, and that is the end of the presentation that I have.
Thank you for viewing this Next Village video recording. We hope you enjoyed it. Please help us spread the word and tell friends and neighbors about Next Village events and services for seniors and adults with disabilities in San Francisco. Visit our website to learn more about our vibrant, growing network, as well as to view our calendar of upcoming Zoom and in-person events and activities in San Francisco. Our website is nextvillagesf.org. Contact us to join our email list to learn about events and resources for seniors in San Francisco. And subscribe to the Next Village YouTube channel by clicking the button below.